everyone, and welcome back to another episode of FECast, the official podcast of Friends of Eternal. I am your host, Sunyveil, and today I am joined by ECQ Top 16 competitor, IlyaK 1986. You may have seen him on Discord, in Twitch chat, or on Reddit voicing his... Well, he's not afraid to voice his opinions, and we're happy to have him on the show. How are you doing, Ilya?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that you had some good success in the latest ECQ. Top 16 is no joke. I'm glad to see there.
Making up for all the time I lost back in step 1, and when Stone Scar's good, the game's a lot of fun. The faction there just has a personality of its own. Like, when you are playing Stone Scar, there's a certain feeling of, I want to smash my opponent, I want to go at his face and kill him and just get in there and rock out. And it's a lot of fun, and I recommend it to a lot of people. Fire up Manu's latest ECQ winner and have a blast, because when Stone Scar is good, it's a lot of fun to really be that proactive, that in your opponent's face, and really pushing the action.
You and I are no strangers to Stone Scar, having played the strategy in ETS Worlds 2017, I want to say.
Yes.
And
yes.
Also, of course, both of us have been around since pretty much the very beginning of Eternal, and so were the ECQ winners. Tony G and Manu S, long-standing members of the community. It is great to see them winning their invites to Worlds, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I can't think of two more deserving individuals, given the composition of the tournament, given how long they've been around, how long they've been grinding. These are two absolutely phenomenal players, content creators, and so on. Tony G, one of the best the game has ever seen. Manu West has created more competitive decks than I could keep count of, and is basically the biggest reason for Team ET's success, according to some of its own team members, like Tabu and Moosh, who regularly say, hey, sometimes we just have no idea what to play, and we just take Manu's latest deck and fight the ETS because he's amazing, and it shows.
I mean, I can attest to that. Being a former member of ET, there were more than one occasions where I just took one of his lists and was able to top 4 a tournament or something like that. So definitely good to see these two representing the Eternal community at Worlds. So we've got a great show for you this week. We're going to cover a little more on the ECQ, not just the winners, but a little bit more. We'll be talking about the ECQ, what decks did well, and what decks rose to the top. We're going to be talking about Eternal Chronicles, a new tabletop game that Direwolf Digital is going to be pushing out in August. There's a new set on the horizon, and we know it's been coming, but we have a release date. It's going to be coming out on Thursday of this week, May 9th, and I'm really excited to finally be drafting something that isn't set 5.
Yeah, I have not paid attention to draft ever since step 4, prior to the double influence changes. So I last drafted back when Living Example, call him G, was a 2-1 for 2T instead of a 2-2 for 2 and double time influence. So that's when I stopped, because the ECQs were on the horizon, and I thought I can play the ECQs, or I can burn all my gold drafting, because I'm not an elite draft. So that's the last time.
Going that long between drafts, that feels just like embarrassing to me. I mean,
hey, now that the ECQ is out, then I might pick it up again.
See, I would not say publicly that I have not drafted in a month, because that to me would just it would just totally crater my reputation, but I guess you're just a more confident man than I.
Oh, I mean, there are certain draft environments that I like more and that I like less. From what I heard about Step 5, it was essentially Voltron, the draft format, and that's just not a kind of format that sounds interesting to me. Like, my favorite format was 4-pack Step 1, because that was just go at them. For the same reason that Stone Scar is fun and constructed is the same reason that Step 1 draft was fun. Just go at them, go ham, and, attack like you mean it. Set 2 had its own flavor, then Set 3 was, well, we don't talk about Set 3 limited here. and then Step 4 in the beginning, it was good, and then I stopped for a while. So given that we're seeing Onslaught, which is a mechanic that really rewards good attacks and getting in there early and attacking, pressing tempo, pressing the action, then I really, really hope that Set 6 draft is going to be a callback to Step 1, and about, getting on the ground, getting in there, pressing the action, attack, all go, and, just having a blast.
I'm debating whether I should subtitle this episode 8 or whatever, the history of Eternal, or episode 8, principles of attacking by IlyaK. I think both would be appropriate, given what we've talked about so far. Okay, so, also, we'll be talking about the new mechanics, twist and shift, in the new set of Dark Frontier, and then we'll be talking about just a few spoilers. We've seen a lot of the set. We'll be talking more about specific cards next week. This week we'll just talk about ones that have really caught our eye. And finally, usually we end the show with Sunny's not having it, my hot take on a situation. But how could I have a hot take on a situation when my guest is Captain Hot Takes, Ilya himself? So Ilya's going to take over that section of the show for me, and I am excited for what he has. Alright, let's get into it. We talked about how the winners of this ECQ, or essential winners, Tony G and Manu, are going to be going on to Eternal Worlds. Tony played a Winchest deck not too different from FJS decks that we've seen in the past, and Manu was on Stone Scar with the buff Champion of Chaos. And something I would like to point out about these decks is both of them had 4 Torch, 4 Vara, 2 Statuary Maiden. They were really prepared for Praxis play.
Yeah, definitely. So, I forget the exact Mark Twain quote, but contrary to popular belief, the demise of Vara and all the best removal in 3 factions has been greatly exaggerated. Vara is still an amazing card, and if you surround her with premium removal, she will win you games. Statuary Maiden, also very well positioned against at least half the metagame, as we could see. Time decks generally don't like her, and she really helps out a lot in that regard. And the 8 Smuggler playstyle is still good, and Red Canyon Smuggler is still quite good when your opponent isn't playing Vicious Highwayman, Mars Favor, or Snowball.
Yeah, and we saw a big decrease in decks playing those cards because I think they weren't very effective against Praxis. And that's the other big story of the weekend. Praxis was 45% of the top 64. We don't know how much of the actual field it was, but that is a tremendous number. And all I can say about that is I called it. I mean, I was like, Praxis is the deck to beat, guys. Everyone, make sure you can beat Praxis or play Praxis. And I think a lot of people did exactly that. And the people that did it best, the people who beat Praxis the best, were the people that were alive at the end of the bracket.
Yeah, but, to your credit, first of all, the deck is obscenely good for how easy it is to play. Even if you're a quote-unquote filthy net decker, which I really recommend a lot of people. If you're just getting started with the game, pick a deck that's successful and affordable and just go with it. You got to learn the rules first before you start breaking them, before you start, building your own top-tier decks, which very few people can do. But even, if you just, the deck construction aside, which is, jam all these pledge units and then Heart of the Vault and Titan and Torch because duh. Even that aside, the deck is so easy to pilot because your opening hand keep is, well, is this a reasonable hand with pledge? Okay, I keep. Is this a bad hand or, doesn't have pledge? I ship. And from then on, it's the very basics and fundamentals, attacking, blocking, Torch, Eternal. Like there's it isn't so much about what outs do I need to draw to, how do I manage my life total, do I burn the removal now or do I save it, blah blah blah. It's basically dump power, dump hand as soon as you can, and be tempo efficient, and you will win game. Because there's only so badly that you can do with Plan A, Teacher into Stinger into Cicalis. Plan B, beat you down, set 2 Praxis, Titan, Heart of the Vault, Torch style. Or, set 5.5, absolutely high roll the ever-living crap out of you with Pledge synergies, getting a board full of Berserker Sharas because of Daria, who I said was an amazing card and will be amazing the moment it's good, and Gunrunner combo. Like, the deck has so many free wins, so easy to pilot, and it's far more successful than it has far more success than any deck that is that easy has any right to be in.
Okay, so for listeners at home, I have already chastised Ilya for talking about this ease of play in my Discord, and I think the deck actually has a lot of play to it, and there are a lot of really important decisions as you play the deck. But we're not going to spend the next 20 minutes arguing arguing about whether that's true or not, because I'm sure we could. Like, that seems like that'd be a very entertaining and easy activity for us to partake in.
Sure, but I mean, like, to give you an example of, how justice was served, you, Mr. Mad Scientist, got whacked by your own creation in the first round. TV Tropes is an entry for this. It's called Gone Horribly Right. It shouldn't be that easy that, oh, hey, a week ago, here's this cool new deck. A week later, it takes up 50% of the ECQ metagame and destroys its own creator in a mirror match in round 1.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep on losing in the top 64. It just keeps on happening. But, like, even when I wasn't playing the mirror, I was still losing in the top 64. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. We talked a lot about how Praxis was so good last week. This week, people figured out how to beat it, and that is large, deadly units and removal. And that's why we have Tony and Manu standing on the podium at the end of the day. So, major props to them. I love seeing people that are ready for a metagame doing well, because I think that that's a skill that should be rewarded in Eternal, and I think Eternal does reward that. I think that most of the metagames are pretty targetable, like there are ways to capitalize on what other people are doing it, and I think that this ECQ was a great showcase.
Right, yeah, to Direwolf's credit, I think that no deck is really above targeting. Like, even, day 1, set 5 Winch with 3-spell Lifesteal Razan, 2-3 Red Canyon Smuggler, 3-3 Hidden Road Smuggler, that's the Rakan and Argent, respectively. That was a targetable deck. You could have played Genève into that and had a decent match. The problem was that at that point in time, people were trying to curve Sandstorm Titan into Jotun Peacecaller into Heart of the Vault in Genève. So they were just falling on their faces for obvious reasons, as we like to say. And so, of course, Winchester just made everyone look like morons. But even that deck, I contend, was targeted.
I would actually disagree with you there as well. I think that deck was just way too good. I could not... That's another instance of me being aware of a deck and not being able to beat it, and therefore playing it in the tournament.
I think it was top of tier 1, not tier 0. I don't think the game has ever seen a true tier 0 deck, but that hasn't stopped Direwolf from making changes anyway, as we've clearly seen, to Stone Scar back in the day that got just half of its power back. Like, it didn't get Drake back, it didn't get Rapid Shot back, it didn't get Jito back. And, top of tier 1, and that nerf hammer is going to swing, I think. Or at least it has swung in the past. But to Direwolf's credit, a lot of the decks in the metagame, if you see them coming, you can target them. You can say, hey, I expect this deck, I'm going to prepare for this deck. And in the case of Praxis Pledge, it was Statuary Maiden, Champion of Chaos, Vara. Like, my top 64 and top 32 were both Praxis Pledge, Maidens, Champions of Chaos, and Vara put in an immense amount of work. And, on stream when I lost, my first game was an awful draw. Second game I won. And third game, I drew a Maiden, didn't draw a single Champion, didn't draw a single Vara. There you go. And it was close then, too. So, and that was a suboptimal Stone Scar, as Manu showed. He wouldn't let me know the most recent variant, so I had to take the last one I saw and just go with it. I only realized I had 3 Maidens main deck and none in the market after it was pointed out to me after I won 21-7 in the qual. I looked at it and I said, wait a minute, I was playing without a 4th Maiden the whole time, and I never got this cookbook? What the hell? I can't believe it. So, yeah, Maiden, Champion Chaos, Vara put in a ton of work. And in terms of other preparation, we saw a hashtag with their Huru Pledge. And guess what? You plop down a Silverwing Courier that's immune to damage, all the deadly overwhelm, quick draw, double damage, berserk, whatever in the world is not going to get past.
Was that what hashtag was playing? I thought they were playing just Huru Flyers.
No,
Juggler was definitely playing Pled, but anyway, either strategy is good against.
It could have been Juggler. Hashtag I think was playing Huru Flyers with 4 main deck Extras Blades, and for their first 2 rounds they got paired up against Reanimate. Like, that's a buy if I ever saw it. Isomorphic had them round 1, bounced immediately. Then another Reanimator in top 32 bounced immediately. Like, that's just brutal. But
yeah,
props to them.
You know what?
For
That actually goes toward your point earlier about how no matter how powerful a deck is on paper or in the abstract, it is something that can be targeted. If Reanimator suddenly became an absolute top of tier 1 menace, we'd have Aegis units plus Range Blades in order to take it down, right? So,
right.
I mean, that's what makes this tournament seem so fun to follow and play, and it's not just the same decks over and over and over again for 6 months. Or at least the decks change because the cards change, and therefore the decks have to change to accommodate that a lot.
Right.
So, we are done with this format. This is the end of the Homecoming format, and all future tournaments are going to feature Dark Frontier. But before we get into actually talking too much about Dark Frontier, the release date was announced along with a new tabletop game that Direwolf is coming out called Eternal Chronicles. This looks like a deck building game, perhaps maybe similar to Dominion or...
tabletop deck builders?
Yeah.
So, let me get you here. So, 2017 PAX East, I went to PAX East, got tickets, hey, Direwolf was going to be there, and I just want to experience it for once. And I played this game called Clank. Now, I know I've given Direwolf a lot of criticism in the past over Eternal, but when I played Clank, that game was a blast. So, it's just a lot of fun. Like, it's a board game and an on-the-fly deck builder. So basically, like, imagine you're kind of playing, like, Monopoly doesn't do it justice. Just everyone knows what Monopoly is. So imagine you're playing a board game like Monopoly, just a lot more in-depth. You roll a die, you move your little avatar on the board, and you pick up cards. And you have to select cards. Like, you are drafting while you're playing a board game, and you're building this deck in stride with a preset collection of cards. So, just think basically board game plus cube, and you'll get an idea of how cool Clank is. So, considering what Direwolf that they're learning and iterating, I have immense expectations for an Eternal board game, and I will recommend wholeheartedly, without even seeing it, that if you have friends in physical proximity that like to play board games, if you're that kind of geek nerd, however you call yourself, that on a Friday evening, that instead of going to the bar and getting absolutely plastered, you call over 3 or 4 of your friends and play a board game, pre-order it. Just no questions asked. Pre-order this game. You will enjoy it, I promise.
Yeah, I'm a gigantic fan of tabletop deck builders as well. They're an absolute blast, and I can't wait to see what this looks like. And you know what? I think it's actually a really smart business move by Direwolf to get the Eternal IP out there. I mean...
Oh, absolutely, because, if you Google Eternal, well, what's going to come up? God knows what. So you have to Google Eternal card game. So, like, at least Wizards of the Coast got this correct. Instead of they're calling their game Magic, they called it Magic the Gathering. So people have a very specific term to look for, and even MTG is this very specific acronym. Eternal is just called Eternal. So Direwolf creating a new board game that says, hey, this is our IP, and you don't have to spend 40 hours just being a newbie and grinding up your collection to play the real game, or however long it takes these days. That here's this board game. You can just open it up, play it out of the box with your friends, and get introduced to these really cool characters. Like, you have this barbarian queen. She gets a ton of things done. She blasts people with lightning. You have her badass shadow magic daughter. You have this anti-hero cowboy, and even these superheroes with mechanical magical wings that fight for love and justice. At least while they're alive, anyway. And I think people are going to have a blast, and they're going to say, hey, what else does Direwolf make? This Eternal card game, and it has the best business model of any free-to-play game I've ever played, and by a mile. And the client is great, aside from the friends list, but that's a small prize. And it's really a lot of fun, and I think people are really going to enjoy the Eternal board game, and they'll hopefully get them playing the Eternal card game.
Yeah, I mean, it comes with a free draft, and a free draft in several packs, right? And you get an additional draft ticket just for pre-ordering. So it looks like it's going to be really sweet. You get some free Eternal stuff just for buying it, and I think this is a type of game that I would want to buy anyway. And also, Ilya, you said earlier, Friday night with the real life friends. I have no concept of what that is. All my friends are on the internet.
You and me both right now. So, at least as far as people that play board games. I have two very good friends, but, they're as far from board games as I could possibly imagine.
Well, what we really need is we need a digital version of this deck builder game, this tabletop deck builder game. If we could just have, like, an online version that maybe just uses the card aspect, maybe not the deck building aspect, I think that would really help us experience this game. But I'm not sure that Direwolf can come out with such a product on such short notice, so we'll just have to suffer not having any real-life friends. Okay. Anyway, so that announced the date for Dark Frontier. That's going to be Thursday, so close. The set looks pushed based on a lot of the cards that I've seen. Granted, we might all have already seen all of the cards that are actually pushed and might make their way to Constructed, but I'm really excited to get my hands on it and start playing. They also have now revealed all the mechanics that are going to be in the set. We have Twist and Shift. What do you think about these mechanics? Why don't you tell us a little bit about these mechanics and tell us what you think of them, Ilya?
Okay, so aside from Onslaught, which is if you attack, the next card you play has a bonus.
Right, and that's really more of a summon than anything. Like, I feel like we've seen those types of effects more or less.
Right. It's another little friend. Twist it's present on units only, and you pay a cost. So far, every single one of these abilities have a cost, and you can activate them any amount of times per turn. But what happens is that the unit gets +1 attack and -1 health. So if you have a unit that's a 3/4, like Pokas, who is absolutely powerful, he becomes a 4/3, and he does something. So Pokas, let's just use him as an example. He is a 3/4 for a 3 double time. He gives you +1 power, and also has this line that says, your opponents cannot play spells directly on their units, so my heart weeps for all the aggro that want to actually play combat tricks while he's in play. And you can pay 2 to twist Pokas, so give him +1, -1, and increase the power he gives you by 1. So you play him on turn 3, and he gives you 1 more power, like Initiative Sands or Aurelian Merchant. And then you untap, the next turn you're at 4 power, you play another power, you're at 5, and you can twist him, so he becomes a 4/3, and suddenly you're at 6 maximum power, and you can twist him again, he becomes a 5/2, and you're at 7 maximum. So that's what Twist does. It's different on each unit. It's going to do something different on a per unit basis, but ultimately you pay a cost, you give your unit +1 attack, -1 health, and you get some sort of benefit. And I like this. From a conceptual design, I really like this. It gives people a lot more control over the state of the unit. It buffs spells that previously were not so good. For example, the refresh on Praxis Arcanum used to be a complete dud. Well, I give my unit 4 health, but now you give your unit +4 health. Guess what? You can twist that unit 4 more times.
I think not just for Constructed, but I think especially for Limited, that's going to be a big deal because, Limited's a little slower. There are just more turns pass, and you'll have more opportunities to activate these units. And not only that, you can set up your units to line up to your opponent's units better, which is a big part of Limited. For example, if your opponent has a 5/4, having a 4/1 to enable to block it or to, stare it down is a really big deal in Limited. And I think that's a big principle of Limited, and that's just something I'm really excited about. Making sure that your cards line up with your opponent's more valuable cards. I'm really looking forward to playing with it.
Right, absolutely. It does so many good things. A, it gives you more small decisions to make. B, it gives you power sync. So if your draw for the turn was a brick, well, hey, can I get some benefit by twisting up one of my units? Yes? Okay, let's do that. And at least I'm doing something instead of just passing the turn doing nothing.
Yeah, and you mentioned the example with Refresh earlier. I think that's also something really interesting about this because you have to have a lot more awareness of how much health your unit has and how much health it's going to need to survive through something and how many times you can twist it, or if you can give an effect such that a unit can have additional maximum health, then you can twist it more times. And I think that all of these decisions and considerations are going to be really interesting and lead to, well, hopefully a more interesting draft format than the one that we have now. I can't say because I haven't played it yet, but I'm really optimistic and I can't wait.
My expectations as usual, I'll set them low, and let them build up, because ultimately, Twist, your units get more attack. Onslaught, you're rewarded for attacking. And that segs me into the third mechanic, which is Shift, which is essentially a sort of suspend mechanic that you can play a unit for its shift cost. And here's the mechanic. You play a unit for its shift cost, and for 3 turns, it's going to be on the board, but untargetable by any sort of single target effect. You literally cannot click it. So if you want to silence it with a Desert Marshal, you can't. If you want to torch it, you can't. What you can do is hit it with area of effect spells. So the examples Direwolf used were, hey, if your opponent has multiple shifted units, you can wipe them away with a harsh rule. But there are several very cool interactions that come at both from the other side of the coin, which is, hey, I can use area of effect buffs on my unit, and they can't be interacted with in so many different ways. And on top of that, when a unit comes out of shift, it can immediately attack, and it is unblockable. So imagine a charge unblockable for the turn unit. And you have all your power to buff it that turn. So, for instance, this leads to a lot of possibilities of one-turn kills out of nowhere. So if we look at the Stone Scar Smuggler, which is a 3/2 shift 3, which means you can pay 3 to play it shifted, so it can't attack or block, it's not on the board for 3 turns. But when it comes out of shift, here's a janky combo off the top of my head. You shift it, and then 4, 5, 6, you hit your power drops. What you do is you play Twin Barrel on it, which is the double damage weapon, 0/0. You play Gift of Battle on it, so it's now a 3/2 double damage Berserk, essentially charge unblockable. So we're up to 12 damage, so 3 times 4. And then you play a Rapid Shot on it to bring it to 7 attack. So that's 3 + 2 + 1 on power. Use all 6 power, and that is, 14 times 2. That is a clean OTK from 25.
There you go. IlyaK has broken the metagame. Everyone craft your double barrels right now. We've got an OTK in the format.
Like that's just an example of something a bit jankier, draw dependent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going that far into the 3-faction thing, but yeah, it does lead to really interesting aggressive strategies that use shift to protect their units until they can get that unblockable attack and perhaps just have a big turn there. It'll be interesting to see if that type of deck is viable in the new format, and I think it would be really exciting if, maybe you're a bit miserable to play against if it's too good. But also that, like you said, these 3 mechanics, they all create more damage in a way. Unblockable, making more attack and less health, and also having positive effects for when you're after you attack. So maybe it'll be a really aggressive format. Maybe it'll make the constructed format really aggressive. And I mean, I don't know about you, but yes, I do know about you. You love attacking. I like attacking in limited formats as well. I think that figuring out combat is one of the most fun things in limited formats. So I'm really excited for how Shift comes out. One more thing that we should probably mention that someone brought up is you can shift some things and then stand them together so that they have Aegis as soon as possible.
Yes. So the new card that was spoiled, which is Zoltal Loyalist, she's a 7 double justice, 6/6 endurance. When one of your units attacks the enemy player alone, it gets +1/+1. And her shift cost is 3. So she is a 3-cost Paladin Oathbook that comes down in 3 turns, and it's only a 6/6 attack. So what you could do is 2-drop, and then turn 3, turn 4, Zolta Loyalist. Depending on if you're a player draw, if you're on the draw, then it's only turn 3, and then turn 4 you stand together. So you could go 1-drop, 2-drop, shift Loyalist, and start to get in there and stand together the turn before the harsh rule, and then a few turns later she's going to come down and get in there for 7, and she's a 7/7 Aegis Endurance. So it basically stand together is the other side of the, hey, you can harsh rule and hailstorm your opponent's shifted units. Yes, but guess what? I can stand together them, and suddenly the control player is in a whole heap of trouble.
Yeah, we'll see if people are calling for stand together nerfs a couple days after the set release. I wouldn't be surprised if you're putting together a bingo card of things that might happen with Dark Frontiers release. I would recommend that one. The people calling for nerfs to stand together. What else would be on your bingo card, by the way, Ilya?
Maybe some moaning over the insignias. RNG is already very salty about the shift mechanic that, oh, it's so uninteractive. You need the special type of fast interaction for when a unit comes out of shift. And I think we're going to have a lot of people moaning about, oh my god, uninteractive OTK deck. Oh, uninteractive shift deck. I think shift is going to be a very rage-inducing mechanic for a lot of people that are unprepared to deal with.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's certainly interesting, and I'm excited to see how it plays out, because these concerns that you're voicing are very valid. They are ways of making shift, like, extremely powerful. And I have more faith in the developers than most people, I would say. They are probably well aware of these mechanical advantages that shift might give and create for some very powerful strategies, such as ones you're talking about.
Right. So let me qualify this. The counterplay to shift is the counterplay that they want to push for Suck, which is just kill them. If your opponent is spending power to not affect the board for several turns while they pay to shift a bunch of units in, well, guess what? Those units are 3 turns away. If your opponent is going power down, do nothing, pass, power down, do nothing, pass, guess what? War Leader, Champion of Chaos, Vara, swing at you for several turns, Face Blast, that is Flame Blast, and then Merchant for another Flame Blast. Guess what? By the time your first unit shifts in, you're at -2. Good game, sir.
Yeah.
That is how you counter shit.
That is a way, that is one of the ways to do it. Sure that some people will be employing that strategy. Okay, by the way, my bingo card has a lot of people complaining about warped 5-drops off the top of the deck over and over again. You know, the same thing that we had when Heart of the Vault first came out, basically.
I mean, quick, dust off your Found Strangers. I mean, are we going to see the old closed beta meme of Found Stranger greater than Sandstorm Titan? So, a little history aside here, that meme arose from the fact that old Champion of Cunning was a 4/4 instead of 5/5, but for his Primal Influence, all your units get +1/+1 in flying, and his Shadow Influence was all your units get +1/+1 in charge. So what you did was you built up a reasonable board, and then you slammed Champion of Cunning, and you suddenly OTK'd your opponent in the air with a whole bunch of super buffed units. The card was amazing or super busted, depending on how you look at it. Now,
I mean, I think amazing and super busted kind of go hand in hand, but yeah, that was something that we saw. It would be really flavorful if the Strangers came back for Dark Frontier, right? I think that Strangers came from the Shadowlands, and then if we saw a return of them in this set, I think that would just be fitting, almost.
It would, because if you think about the cycle of the 5 influence 5-drops that are the size of 6 or 7 drops, they're really incentivizing you to keep it to 1 or 2 factions. And between the insignias and the Stranger, you can really supercharge your influence very fast and be able to achieve very tall amounts of influence. Like 3 faction decks are going wide on influence, like Winchester, but Found, for instance, can go very tall on influence and have a double buff Champion of Cunning or a Ross on turn 5. And if you're warping in Ross on turn 5 and following that up with a Champion of Cunning, your opponent's in some trouble if they don't have you, way behind.
Yeah, maybe I should revise my bingo card in saying that, warping one of those 5-drops on turn 5 in 3-faction deck or something. Maybe some people are going to be doing that. Okay, speaking of the influence in this set, we have insignias that we're going to talk about some of the spoilers. Insignias being the new powers that are released in this, and these are going to be uncommon, so everyone will be able to get their hands on these, which I think is a great thing about Eternal, is that the power base is super easy to get a hold of. So the insignias, I'll just read Praxis Insignia, for example. It says, gain Fire and Tine, depleted if you have any cards from other factions in your deck. So this is a card that you will only play in 2-faction decks, but when you do, it is undepleted. It is the best power that you have, basically. It's undepleted no matter what is going on in the board, and it provides both factions. And we're not getting the full 10 faction pairs for the insignias. We're getting Praxis, Combray, Huru, Stonescar, and Feln. I assume we're going to be getting the other ones somewhere down the line, but for now, this is what we have. I think that these cards are extremely powerful, but I actually don't like the design a ton. I think that this type of payoff for just constructing your deck a certain way rather than having a certain board state is not where I'd like to see it. I would like to see depleted if you have cards from other factions maybe in your hand as opposed to being in your deck, because I don't know, like these to take some examples of cards that we've seen. What's the name of the card that is a warp power? It's power that says warp if you only have one faction or less.
Is it Seal of Devotion? It's warp if you only have influence of a single faction.
Yes. So obviously this card is best in a deck that only plays one faction so that it is always on. But maybe someone can come up with a really clever way of building a deck such that they can have that warp power and still be playing cards from multiple factions. Similar to how we're seeing
blood in your Argenport deck.
Yeah, similar to how we're seeing this Reanimator deck that has no Primal or Shadow Sigils in it, but is mostly a Primal and Shadow deck that functions off of Justice Sigils and multi-faction powers and diplomatic seals.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so like I would really like to see more cards that have something to do that check the state of the game as opposed to like the state of the deck. I don't like this design, just rubs me the wrong way, and I wish that it just checked what was going on, like maybe in your hand or maybe on the board, as opposed to being like, okay, if you're going to put this in a deck, you basically have to have a deck that is only these factions. And that's just, I feel like I would like to see the possibility for people coming up with creative ways of.
So I will agree with you, but for different reasons. Because it's actually possible for your opponent to deactivate your insignias. If you are with Light the Fuse, that one Grenadin that puts fire bombs in the bottom half of your deck, or the most common and irritating one, Amarin Stinger. If you are not in time and that infiltrates on you, your insignias are now depleted.
Yeah, if you have, like, for example, if you're setting up a turn 3 Champion of Chaos and your opponent goes Amarin Stinger, attack, Scorpion Traps, and you're looking at your, 2 insignias in your hand that you're planning on playing turn 3 and 4 to curve out Champion of Chaos into Vara, that is going to be the worst feel bad. Oh, man. That should be on the bingo card. Let's put that on the bingo card.
Yeah, that is ridiculous, and I honestly hope Direwolf patches that, because I just think that it's a bit silly that goes completely against the spirit of what these cards are supposed to do.
Yes.
Unless, and here's my call, unless we get a cycle, that all the other factions have good ways of putting in detrimental cards in the deck. Like the Fuse, instead of putting it randomly in your deck, it puts it in the top, 30, puts 5 fire bombs in top 30 cards.
Wait. How about this? So you can have this card, it just costs 1 or something like that. It's like Seek Power, or no. It's like Cargo, okay? So get a Fire Sigil or a Time Sigil from your deck and put into your hand, and your opponent puts a Nyctotraxion on the bottom of their deck. So it's very unlikely that they're ever going to get to the Nyctotraxion. It's never going to affect the game, but it's going to shut off insignias. How about that?
I like it!
Okay, so these are obviously very powerful. They're going to be incentivizing 2 faction strategies. I think that, like you said earlier, I think that this is going to enable people to play those quintuple influence cards in multi-faction decks, which is, well, I mean, that's pretty crazy. I don't know that you're going to be able to play multiple. Like, I don't think you could play both the fire quintuple influence card and the time influence.
You have to pick a side and go. But
yeah, I think you have to pick a side and go, but I think it's doable.
It may be, but to illustrate just how good the power, the influence is in 2 factions, according to a spreadsheet that is essentially calculated for Eternal based off of Frank Karsten's calculation for Magic the Gathering, with 16 sources in a 75-card deck, you are 90% likely to have 1 influence on turn 2 of that faction. So if I'm playing crest, seats, banners, and insignias, I don't need, and I'm playing Huru, and I want to play Serditi, the Killer Steel, the Murderer Steel, or whatever his name is. Valkyrie, Janitor Willie. If I'm playing him, I can play 9 Justice Sigils, then all 4 Huru Jewels, and I will be 90% likely to play a Dusk Raider on Kirk.
That is absurd. Yeah. Well, I mean,
there you go.
That
That is how good. But to illustrate, that is how good the fixing in double faction will be.
Yeah.
So if you're in Felon and you want to put in, 2 Refound Rangers, then we're talking about almost guaranteed Aegis Champion of Cunning on turn 5, and
then warped quintuple primal card for the rest of the game, basically. Right. It's only going to last another 2 turns, so you just need to warp it twice.
Right. Right. And the primal, 5 influence card, he's actually unkillable, normally. Because when you kill him, he just shifts. So you slay him, he goes to sleep for 3 turns, and when he comes back, he's just going to whack you in the face for 7 unblockable damage. You kill him again, and he doesn't die, he goes back to sleep. So, feeding time, Statuary Maiden, Desert Marshal, Equivocate, huge premium on those cards going forward.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned probably the most important one is Equivocate, because it's going to answer anything that comes off of Shift, and also just deal with some of these extremely problematic 5-drops. Okay, let's talk about another spoiler that we saw this week, and it's Perilous Research. I think this one's really interesting. This is part of a cycle of spells that we have that do something and draw you a card that is more powerful. So let me just explain the card. It's a 3-cost double time card. It's spell, Perilous Research, reduce the cost of each relic in your deck by 1, create and draw an alarming finding. Well, what's an alarming finding? Costs 8. It says, for each of your relics, draw a card and play a 3/3 Sandcrawler with Overwhelm. So here you have a card that sets up a relic strategy and makes all the relics in your deck cheaper. It ramps you on turn 3, essentially, and then eventually you get to play the second half of it, the alarming findings, which costs 8. So it's going to be late in the game, but it's a great finisher. You draw a ton of cards and play a bunch of Sandcrawlers, and all you need is a Sandstorm Scarf and an obelisk, a Xenon obelisk out in order to make your board absolutely terrifying and probably be able to trump your opponent just with this one card. So I think that this cycle is really interesting and inventive. It's kind of, I guess it's the aftermath cards from Magic, but I think that especially with the ability to abuse the extra card from markets and whatnot, I think it's going to make for some really interesting gameplay. And I don't know how good these cards are, but they're certainly very interesting, and I'm excited to check them out.
So my take is conceptually they're interesting, but I'm going to take, so far, it's a hard pass on all of them for me to various extents. Like the primal one is 4 double primal, warp, deal 3 damage, onslaught. Gate behind onslaught, create and draw an Arc Dragon, which is a 4 double primal, 3/4 flying berserk, overwhelm your spells, deal 1 damage. So that is essentially you're paying 8 for what I'd say is a much worse Rizan. And you're paying a huge premium because you can play these cards over 2 turns. So if you've ever played with Skycrag Scalebreak, she's a 5/5 flyer that can attack as early as turn 4, but guess what? You're paying 7 total for her if you play her own weapon on it. And that's a pretty hefty cost. So this Arc Dragon is going to cost 8 for a 3/4 that deals 3 damage on ETB. Not a fan. Moving on to the fire one, I forget what it's called.
Gives your units +1 attack.
Yes, it's a 4-cost double fire influence that gives all your units +1 attack. So that's not even unlock potential, which is a draft common, and not that high on the pick order. And then it creates and draws a headshot, which is 7 double fire, deal 7 to a target, including your opponent, and then give your units double damage and overwhelm this turn. So that's basically, hey, I took turn 4 off. I basically spent a turn doing nothing. And then in return, I get this spell that's going to, smash in the dome. But unfortunately, all these cards are legend. Like, if they were rare, I'd consider some of them bomb, right? Hey, I attack with a dork. I play the primal card. I finish off your big unit. And then on top of that, I have a 3/4 flying berserk overwhelm flyer. And that's a big game. But these are all legendary, so odds are you're not even going to see them.
Yeah, wait, what? But you don't play limited. Why do you care about what the rarity is?
Well, because I used to play limited, and I think this set I may, get back in and go full ham. But these spells, they're very cool in what they do, but they're wildly overcosted for construction, I think. And as far as limited goes, they're all legendary, so they're not going to show up too often there either. So where are we supposed to see them? I'm not quite sure. I like the concept, but ultimately numbers matter. And I think the numbers make all of these, hey, they're going to create some sort of pilot reel. Like you're going to have someone that adapts batteries as Aurelian Rat Cage deck. They're going to have 5 relics in play, or 6 or 7 Winter Cap Severin, and they're going to cast Disturbing Finding, and they're going to refill their hand, have a board full of 3/3 overwhelms, and they're going to look great, but then you step back and think, I could have just gotten Bizarre Stampede from my market won the game 3 turns ago. So, where are they supposed to go? I'm not sure, but hopefully someone makes a cool highlight reel and it's all going to be worth it. But, these are the kinds of cards that when you look at people with large amounts of stone, like me, and people with smaller amounts of shift stone, these are highly speculative,
that's fair.
legendaries that someone like Loco Pojo will craft and, try and get that highlight reel going. And then someone like me will say, look, these are very cool in what they do, but numbers matter. I'm staying away.
So let me ask you, before Defiance came out, where were you on Joe? Did you think Joe was going to be busted or insane? Or busted or terrible?
The moment I saw the card, I said, this is a very reasonable card. Because ultimately, he's a piece of cardboard. The way I saw it is, you're paying 2 to draw a card and the dragon. It's a Wisdom of the Others for 2, except with the caveat that one of the cards you draw is this dragon. He's easy to deal with because he's a 6/6 flyer for 7, and doesn't do anything when he comes into play.
So my point is that, you value the extra card pretty highly. I mean,
yes.
They had to dial back Zhou and Jotunhurler, cards that give extra cards. Granted, they give those cards right away, but here we have another card that is similar in the sense that it comes with another card attached to it. So if it looks good on paper, then I think it's just going to play out to be absolutely sane. But even if it looks bad on paper, it might be good enough, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I am on the side of these cards are not quite powerful enough to be powerful and constructed, but I also know that, it doesn't take much in order to make a card that looks something like this to be way better than you expect to.
So here's the reason I'm going to straight disagree with, because if you've ever, I'm not sure if you played TJP Blitz back at the start of set 4, but
I was on ET. Of course I played that.
Okay, great. So then you know that there's a critical difference between Levitate and Accelerated Evolution. That, sure, you cast Levitate and you draw another card, but you actually have to cast Levitate. The card has to actually leave your hand. So you're not actually getting 2 pieces of digital cardboard in your hand.
Wait, but both of those cards were nerfed. I mean, Levitate had a nerf, and so did Accelerated Evolution.
Yes.
What's your point?
So
both cards are worthy of nerfing.
Yes, but my point is that the card actually has to leave your hand. That you don't have 2 cards in your hand at the same time. You don't have the choice between casting Perilous Research and Alarming Finding. You don't draw them both at the same time. So it isn't like, oh hey, I've both. It isn't a fate effect. It's I have to actually cast Perilous Research. I have to spend 3 power and to do nothing to the board or my hand. I do something to my deck. Stone Shaker shows just how meaningless it is.
I've played Stone Shaker in decks before.
Right.
I can't say that they were good decks, but I've tried it.
Exactly. And then and only then do you draw the second card. Like, if you had to, if Jotunhurler, instead of Fate, was on Summon, create and draw Snowball, the card would be completely unplayable.
Oh, yeah, sure. But that also costs 5. I know what... Look, I think you're making a very good point, and I tend to agree with you. I just kind of playing devil's advocate on what,
sure.
could be...
Absolutely, because the whole market mechanic means find as many cards that have 1/2 of them playable, but on Fate, create another copy. So you have a playable card, and then something that turns merchants from card selection into card advantage, which is huge. These cards are not that.
Yeah. Okay, so those are the spoilers that we'll talk about. Now, time to what is usually my favorite segment, but I think it's going to be even better this time, because no matter how hot my takes are, they are nowhere near as hot as Ilya's takes. Ilya, what do you have for us for your hot take this episode of FECast?
So, while we are talking about hot takes, let's talk about Fire, and in particular, Fire and Justice, which has had an injustice done to it over the past set, which is the fact that Rakano went from, essentially this was supposed to be its supporting set. Hey, Rakano aggro was good in set 1, died because more removal came out, and, landing a plant on your champion of Glory was no longer a 3 wins. It got better with set 3 thanks to Whirling Duo and Unseen Commando, and then Hailstorm came out and killed it again, and set 5 was supposed to be, hey, Rakano aggro is good again because of Highland Sharpshooter and Warhelm, and 2/3 double damage Red Canyon Smuggler, which was supposed to essentially carry Rakano aggro on her back. But set 4, end of set 4, Ikaria the Liberator went from 7 to 8, and now she's completely unplayable. And now in set 5, for the Sins of Winchest, Rakano aggro, their Smuggler went from a 2/3 to a 2/1. So Rizan went from a maybe you'll activate him on turn 3 if you're playing Rakano Valkyries to forget it. He's a 5/4 flying reckless, summon deal 3, glorified, not even as good as a gun runner. And Rakano has just really gotten the short end of the stick for Winchester. And so if you're a Rakano aficionado, like Unearthly was back in the day, or maybe you're a new player and you're just starting the game and Rakano aggro was a way to grind some shift zone, play some fast games, I feel for you, because ultimately Winchester is a strong 3-faction deck, but it's always going to be the next card up, the next man up, as Tony G just showed. It doesn't matter that you nerf the deck so long as the core playstyle is intact. But if you're playing Rakano, you have fewer options. Ixton Merchant got nerfed from a 3/3 to a 3/2 for the Sins of Howling Peak. Red Canyon Smuggler from a 2/3 to an eventual 2/1. The Sins of Winchester. Rizan from 3 to 6 spells for the Sins of Winchester. Joe for the Sins of Winchester. And as Manu West said, Stonescar is back, but Rakano is completely dead. Which is, I think, a real shame in the set that was supposed to support Rakano. And it's something I find frustrating, from time to time, in that changes are aimed at a particular deck, like Winchester or Skycrag Howling Peak, that have, collateral damage ramifications far beyond that. For instance, because of Skycrag or Genev Howling Peak, Genev Merchant went from a 3/2 to a 2/2, which basically killed Feln Nightfall Berserk on the spot. And that's a real shame, because Feln Berserk, it wasn't an oppressive deck. It wasn't 50% of the top 64 in any ECQ, and so on and so forth. And it's like, hey, can we allow... I'd really like to see an Eternal in which more decks are able to flourish, and more play styles, more players are able to flourish in their own unique way. If you're a Feln aggro player, I want to see you supported. I want to see you playing the game, because there is a special deck that falls out to you that really has your name on it, and you can make to the top 64 of an ECU with that deck. If you're a Rakano aggro, a Rakano Valkyrie mid-range player, I want you to have something that you really go deep on, that no matter the bad matchups, no matter the weather, no matter the time of day, you are on Rakano aggro or mid-range, because that's a deck that's special to you, and you make it to the top 64 because you're better with that. And I really want to see more decks supported, and because the math works out that we have 10 2-faction pairs, 10 3-faction pairs, 5 of which have yet to receive their formal displays in card, and even, our 5 mono-faction. And let's just say we have 4 archetypes: aggro, mid-range, control, and combo synergy like Aurelian Rack, right? And that is 100 different, unique decks that can support God knows how many players, right? I want to see those decks supported. I want to see that if you're a player that says, I want to play in this particular play style, we can say, hey, this is the box that's going to tickle your fancy, and this is a deck that will support your playstyle fantasy. And if that means that, hey, maybe Winchester is, closer to the top of tier 1 rather than just the top of tier 1.5, I think that that's a price I'd be willing to pay if it means that more players feel welcome because there is a unique play style that really calls out to them. And the fact that we see so many decks just that have yet to even be built get hit by so much collateral damage for the sins of, one or two decks, I hope in the future that policy can go in the opposite direction and we go more in the route of support as many playstyles as possible and provide counterplay in the form of cards people can choose to run for the powerhouse tier 1 deck. If Winchest is drawing a bunch of cards by juggling Zoe, then maybe there should be a fire relic that costs 2 with 2 fire influence that says whenever, summon, both players draw an additional card. Whenever another player draws an additional card, it deals 2 damage. Something like that. That if you think, hey, this deck is terrifying, I want to shore up my match against it, there will be something for you, no matter which one of those 80 to 100 boxes, depending on how we count mono faction you're in. I want more players to feel welcome, and I really want to see an Eternal that welcomes so many more people.
Let it never again be implied that Ilya is not a man of the people. He wants you to have the deck that you want to play. Alright, so I think that what you're saying is great in an ideal scenario, and I think that there's a lot of credibility to what you're saying about how, Rakano is dying for the sins of Winch. But I think the reality of it is 2 things. One is that not all of these 100 combinations that you introduce are actually going to work out the way that you want them to because of some tendencies of various factions. Like, for example, Fire lends itself to being an aggressive faction, for example, and whereas Justice tends to be more defensive. And I think that is going to limit the number of factions. That being said, there are a lot of different combinations of, factions and archetypes, just from an arbitrary standpoint, that are not really that supported, and it would be really cool to see more of those supported. I think that there was a time, I would say before set 5 came out, I think there was a time where there were a lot of different faction pairs supported, and there were a lot of viable decks for those faction pairs without having, one that was just way better than. And it would be great if the game could be continuously balanced in that way so that you had, 20 different strategies to choose from, all of which were viable underneath a certain expected metagame. But I think the reality of it is this game is going to be extremely difficult to balance in order to achieve that effect. I don't think that anyone wanted Praxis to be 45% of the top 64 of this ECQ, or, the domination that we saw of Genev or Winchest in the past. But I think it's just going to be very, very difficult to balance. I think that the scenario that you're describing would be amazing if we could have it happen, but it's just not realistic based on the reality of how powerful some synergies are in certain decks, or how powerful some cards are individually that are unexpected by the devs, and they can't constantly rebalance everything such that what you're describing is possible.
I see the concern that, hey, there's an ideal and there's a reality, but I think that with the luxury of digital balancing and the fact that you can gate cards behind influence costs, for example, Howling Midnight Gale, it's a 3-cost, double primal, double shadow influence card, 4/3 flying, infiltrate, lifesteal, not particularly great, but given the fixing that we have, for example, with Insignias, we can create heavier influence cards that say, hey, if you're in a 2-faction deck, you'll be able to cast this card readily. If you're in a 3-faction deck, you're going to have trouble. And I think I'm going to be, more optimistic than you in this case, because I think the only limitation is the imagination. That how can you tune a card such that a 2-faction pair would be incentivized to cast it, but a 3-faction pair, a 3-faction deck might say, hey, I can do better things with my go wide influence than going tall. For example, Display of Ambition is amazing, but you're not going to be casting Serditi in Winchest, but you might in Rakano. I think there's a lot that can be done because of the fact that influence is not directly correlated to power. For example, Sand Warrior is a 3 as in beer card, but needs 3-time influence. So that separation is what can allow Direwolf to push 2 faction without creating a card that puts 3 faction over the edge. For example, Champion of Chaos, amazing in Stone Scar, less so in Windcheck. Champion of Cunning, payoff for Felon, basically unplayable anywhere else in any 3 faction deck.
Yeah,
there's a lot you can do here, and I have faith in Direwolf that if they set their minds to it, they can really fill in those 80 boxes and welcome so many more people while keeping the game balanced.
Yeah, I think you're actually right. I agree with what you have to say about how, based on using influence, you can gate certain cards to certain decks and be like, yeah, you can play this really powerful card on turn 3, but you can only play it in a Felon deck, or you can only play it in a Xeon deck, or whatever. Like, you could have just, it doesn't even have to be playable on the turn that you have that much power for it. For example, you could have a 2-cost Calmbreak card, but it requires triple time and triple justice or something. I don't know what the card would be.
Absolutely.
It would be something that you want to play later in the game, obviously. But, like, that is something that you could do that separates Eternal's resource system from something like Magic, where a lot of the devs come from and a lot of us are used to, and design cards that really incentivize, being in specific faction pairs or building your power base a certain way in order to be able to play them. I think that is an interesting area of unexplored design territory that we've had a little bit of, like Sand Warrior, for example, you were saying, but we could have even more of, and I think it would be really cool to see that.
Absolutely. So basically, I'm laying down the gauntlet. I'm saying I think this company can do this. It has the tools. The only thing that needs to happen is imagination. And I am confident that these people who have created this amazing game that I've played thousands of hours, you played thousands of hours, the community sing so many praises. I think they're up to the task, and I'm hoping that they'll deliver.
All right, that was a very good take. Okay, so thank you for joining me on this episode of FECast. It's been a blast to have you. This is our longest episode yet, but I feel like talking about all this stuff was a lot of fun. So I'm really glad to have had you on for this. Let's talk about what's coming up next week. By the time that the next podcast will be recorded, the new set Dark Frontier will be out. I am planning on having the most monster episode of FECast I have ever done. I'm going to try to get as many different people from the Discord onto the cast. We'll have people talking about ranked strategies. We'll have people talking about brews that they're playing. We'll have people talking about the draft environment, and we'll just get as many panels of people as we can to talk about these things. This is going to be a huge letdown if I can only get like 2 people to do FECast this week, but I am optimistic. It's going to be an amazing episode. Look forward to it. I know I am. Ilya, do you have anything that you'd like to plug before we say goodbye to everyone?
So tentatively, Kate wants to start a miniature podcast, not miniature, maybe a big podcast with herself and myself, talking about Eternal. I'm not sure whether this will be a thing or not. I'm hoping it is. But the pilot episode will have us reviewing every single card in Dark Frontier from 2 vastly different perspectives. So not to get everyone hyped up yet, but I'm hoping this is the thing that can happen. Tentative name so far is the Disciplinary Weights Podcast.
You're a sad bunch.
Yep. We're going to expose the sad bunch to the real training. Hopefully it happens, and that's all for now.
All right, where can people find more information about this? That sounds like something they're interested in.
I communicate mainly through Reddit and the Discord. So if this thing goes off as planned, I'll just post a link in Reddit, similar to the way Neon and you and whoever else post links to their own Eternal podcast, and hopefully we'll have a good time.
All right, thanks so much for joining me today. Thank you, everyone out there listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. Tell your friends about us if they want to listen to an Eternal podcast that hopefully is very informative. Make sure to let them know that they should check us out, because we're on YouTube, we're on SoundCloud, we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify. Shouldn't be too hard to find. All right, that'll do it. Thanks, everyone, for listening again, and until next time, we will see you in the Friend Zone. Friends of Eternal is an inclusive, community-based team dedicated to self-improvement and helping others do the same. We accept all newcomers to our ranks, so if the team environment appeals to you, or if you just think we're cool and want to hang out with us, we're happy to have you. All you have to do is go to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Sunyveil, and type in !FE, and there you will find more information on how to join the Discord and be a fully fledged member of the team. Thanks again so much for listening, and until next time, we will see you in the friend zone.